Hi, hello, welcome to March. I can't believe how quickly the year has gone already. Oh, this is my mug joining us today, little ghosty friend. And, ooh, I'm gonna share this. We'll get into the books in a second, but this tea is what I'm drinking right now. I love it. I got it on a whim from my favorite tea brand, Harney & Sons. I have a Harney & Sons addiction. So does my dad. He enables me, and I bought the Alice in Wonderland tea. It is black tea with fig, strawberry, and vanilla. Also beautiful tin. As always, Harney always has beautiful tins. And it tastes like a typical black tea, right? But with this almost jam kind of flavor. It's definitely the fig. I love it. It's unique, it's fun. Anyway, I digress, but we're gonna get into all the books I read in the month of February and what I thought about them. I guess, hi, I'm Erin to the people who are watching this, like the two other people that aren't my mom and my dad. And I just wanted to talk about all the books I read this month because we had some really good ones. Started off with a very popular book, Fourth Wing. Now this is of course a new adult dragon fantasy book, but it's become extremely popular outside of fantasy reader circles. It's not just for people who like hardcore fantasy. I've seen a lot of general audiences and even people who don't tend to read much at all. People tend to really like this. I went into it no expectations, so I'm really pleased with it. I do think if you go in thinking it's going to be like a Mistborn, Name of the Wind style high fantasy, you're going to be very let down. So what is this book about? Well, it's about dragons. So yeah, this country, they have a college called Basgiath War College, and you can train to be a healer, a scribe, a regular soldier, or a dragon rider, where if you survive, because it's quite deadly, you will bond to a dragon and, you know, ride them into battle. They are defending their borders from the neighboring country that has griffins and griffin riders. So yeah, that's our basic premise. Violet Sorrengail is our main character, and she was training her whole life to go become a scribe at this college, but her mom is a general, she's a dragon rider, and she basically says, you know, all of my children need to be dragon riders just like the two before you. You have to go be a dragon rider. So she's essentially forced into this deadly competitive school where the students are actually just allowed to kill each other. It's very dauntless and divergent. Here is why I think it's so popular. It is digestible. It is entertaining. A lot is going on. I would definitely compare it more to something like A Court of Thorns and Roses, although I actually think, at least on the first book, I think this is better. It's a romantasy, so there is a fairly strong romance aspect. Again, let's compare it to ACOTAR. But unlike ACOTAR, I would say there is a lot of action and plot still happening in this book. So my boyfriend read it and still enjoyed it, even though he really doesn't care for romance in his books. It relies pretty heavily on some classic tropes and setups in a fantasy world. I don't think the world building is anything special, but I have to say what made it so enjoyable for me was the fact that it has dragons. I just really like dragon fantasy stuff, and I feel like we don't even get a lot of dragon content, and I actually thought the romance overall was pretty good. I, you know, definitely was rolling my eyes, cringing a little bit at certain scenes or sayings, but overall I thought it was a cute relationship. I liked the side characters, the main character Violet. I enjoyed her and her like determination quite a bit. I could probably criticize it more when it comes down to the nitty-gritty details, but enjoyment level wise, I just thought it was a fun time. I really did. I just really like dragons. And next I read an ebook called The Unmaking of June Farrow. You okay, bud? Oh, I know. Do you want to get on my lap? Maybe? Yeah, you do. Okay. We have a friend joining. Hello, baby. This is Toby. I'll zoom you in a little bit. Okay. Next, I read The Unmaking of June Farrow as an ebook. This is by Adrienne Young, and she wrote Fable. She wrote The Spells for Forgetting, which I read last year. And I have to say, I really enjoy the way that she writes, so we'll talk about that in a second. But The Unmaking of June Farrow is an adult fiction kind of romance magical realism book where it's set in this small town in, I think, the Blue Ridge Mountains of North Carolina, where if you've ever lived in a small town in the South, I have, you will know the kind of old-fashioned judgmentalness that can occur. And June Farrow, the Farrow family, definitely experiences this. They're part of the culture of this very small town, and they own a flower farm, but they're sort of seen as, you know, other because A, they're not Christian and they don't go to church, which again, if you have lived in the South, you know how ostracizing that can be. And also the Farrow women all seem to sort of have this curse on them where each woman ends up going crazy. It's getting way too spoilery here. I think it's better if you go into this book knowing almost as little as possible, but essentially June's grandmother dies at the beginning of the book and she's getting suspicious that she's descending into madness as well, just like all the Farrow women before her. And then some weird, like, timey-wimey, magically realism stuff starts to happen, and it plays into all these like town mysteries. It's a fun, mysterious time with some romance, if you like that kind of thing. I don't always. I'm not a big romance girl, but I liked it here because it was endearing and really sweet. I highly recommend. It's a standalone. I really enjoyed it, and the reason I like Adrienne Young's writing is because she has a way with her prose and her words that is so evocative. She creates these settings and characters that feel so visceral and so real. I could just so clearly see and sense this small town in the mountains, the farms and the characters. It was really heartfelt. It's definitely a bit confusing, the time travel stuff at the end. You know, I wouldn't expect this highly detailed scientific explanation, but you know, for a book that's more of just like a magical realism vibes kind of book, I understood and was good with the explanation at the end, and I just highly enjoyed the book. If you liked The Rose Garden by Susanna Kearsley, I think this was even better than that. Or if you enjoyed Adrienne Young's works before, it's very, you know, soft, cozy, mysterious. Highly recommend. Whew, we finished a series. This is Defiant by Brandon Sanderson. So this is the fourth and final book in his Skyward series. This is his YA sci-fi series, and I just really liked it overall. I'm not gonna spoil anything, but the first book, it's called Skyward. It is about a planet called Detritus that, you know, humans have escaped to, and they all have to sort of live in these like underground caverns, and they're being constantly attacked by this like unknown evil space force. So a lot of their citizens end up becoming pilots to try and defend their planet and their people from total annihilation. So Spensa is our main character. She's like 16 or something, and she is determined to become a pilot, right? So the book covers her, you know, going to like flight school and learning how to fly and befriending people. It's very action-packed. Brandon Sanderson, for his YA books, I've noticed, he does tend to make them very like quick and snappy. There's a lot of stuff to do with slugs. It's just, yeah, it's just so fun. And the last book has the classic like Sanderlanche, they call it, you know, the epic big ending battle, you know, and I love that, okay? I love a big epic ending, so I was eating it up. The only thing I would say is that the second and third books are spent where Spencer is very separated from a lot of the characters you come to know and love in the first book, and then we, you know, have a bit more of a return to them in the last book. But it's been so long since that first book that some of the characters I was like, I don't really remember you. So that was my only sort of complaint or drawback. Overall, I really enjoyed the plot, the overall character arcs and endings, the classic Sanderlanche at the end. This is a super, super fun series, and as with every Brandon Sanderson book, has incredible world building with so many different unique layers and interests. I just think Brandon Sanderson is so interested and so good at creating different cultures and peoples and societies. That is what makes his fantasy and sci-fi books so interesting. So overall, solid ending to a solid series. Okay, next I read A Study in Drowning by Reid. I read this as an ebook. This is a dark, twisted, fairy tale style book, and I have to say the vibes are immaculate. We're following this main character named Effie, and she lives in this like fantasy world where it's not really expanded upon, to be honest. That is my one major complaint about this book, is that there's this whole like political background between the northern country and Effie's country below it, and it's never really expanded upon. It's just sort of mentioned in passing. Effie is incredibly intelligent, and she is obsessed with this book. So this author from her country, Myrden, he is like the nation's favorite author, where in this country literature and writing is viewed as like, the thing. Like, this is extremely important in their culture. So Effie knows this book by Myrden by heart. She has been obsessed with it her whole life. It is about a girl who marries the fairy king and defeats him. And one of the reasons Effie is so obsessed with it is because she has been having visions of the fairy king her entire life. So she finds a lot of comfort in this book. So she applies to the literature English college at, this prestigious university, but she is a woman, so she's denied entry even though she got all the grades to get in. And instead she went to the architectural school, and she doesn't really like it. So at the beginning of the book, she finds a posting. So the Myrden estate, Myrden's son, has put out a call for architecture students to apply and then come design Myrden's new estate to honor him and his legacy as an author, right? So obviously Effie applies, and that is where our book begins. There's a lot to do with like sexism and a little bit with SA. If you are not comfortable reading those things, I think they were well done, but if you don't want to read them, they are very thematically present, so I would maybe stray away from this. I would definitely recommend this to people who like dark academia, whimsical, dark fairy tale type stories. And Reid, I have to say, her actual prose and the way she crafted this sort of decrepit, rundown manor setting in this fairy tale style town, I absolutely loved. I could feel and see this manor house, this little village by the ocean. It's really good. It's kind of hard to explain. There's a lot of layers, But overall, I really, really enjoyed it. I do think, again, that the world, either just like don't mention the whole like different country political issues thing if you're not going to address it, or actually just expand upon it, because our main love interest, it's like an enemies to lovers kind of rivalry. He is from this other country studying in Effie's country. That's my other complaint. The side characters, like our love interest, they're nice. Like I liked him. He's a nice guy, but he doesn't have much else. He's just kind of there to be cute and nice. I don't know, like I liked him, but I don't even remember his name, so I don't know. Overall though, it was such a wonderful experience going through this like twisted fairy tale world and mystery. So if you like that kind of thing, highly recommend. Next I read Electra by Jennifer Saint, which this is my gorgeous, stunning, beautiful UK edition cover. This is by the same author who did Ariadne, and I do think Ariadne was better than Electra. If you don't know Greek mythology, history, the Trojan War, the Iliad, the Oresteia trilogy, you probably don't know much about these characters, but it is told from three perspectives: Cassandra, Clytemnestra, and of course Electra. These are three women who are, you know, sort of on the sidelines of the Trojan War. Overall, I really enjoyed it. Of course, I do know these stories quite well, but that doesn't detract from my enjoyment of this. You know, it's taking this set of mythologies and stories and telling it from the perspectives of the women who, you know, obviously the Iliad, the Oresteia trilogy, like these things are not told from the women's perspective. So that's what this is. It's giving them voices. I liked 2/3 of this book. I highly enjoyed the perspectives of Cassandra and Clytemnestra. So Cassandra is a Trojan princess who was cursed by Apollo, where she can see the future, but no one ever believes her. And oh my gosh, she's one of the most tragic figures in Greek mythology. And then Clytemnestra is one of the most evil figures. Like she's this menacing force in mythology. So she is the wife of Agamemnon. If you've read the Iliad, you know who that is. He's one of the kings and generals going off to the Trojan War. I don't want to spoil anything for people who don't know Greek mythology or the Iliad, but yeah, Clytemnestra in the original, you know, plays and stuff is this like evil character. And she does bad things, but honestly, like if you know or if you read this, you'll understand. I don't blame her for doing anything that she did because she was right, okay? So, you know, we get her perspective and we also get Electra's perspective. Electra is the youngest daughter of Clytemnestra and Agamemnon. I really liked Clytemnestra and Cassandra, and I hated Electra so much. I don't think you're supposed to like her. I don't think you're supposed to agree with her perspective. She's kind of this foil, and again, just another example of how men and gods in mythology, you know, how women are sort of the ones who have to pay for the horrible things that they do. That is like very much what Jennifer Saint writes about. That is a very prominent theme within Ariadne. So I don't necessarily dislike reading from Electra's perspective just because I don't agree with her, but I just could not stand her. Like I could not. Every time we switched to one of her chapters, I would like, why do I have to read from her brain again? She's so stubbornly ignorant and dismissive. There are multiple points in this book, which again, I don't think you're supposed to like her, but there are multiple points in this book where she is expressing envy of a literal slave woman who was being held captive and SA'd by her father, because at least that woman gets to be with him and, you know, like feel his touch when Elektra misses her father so much because, you know, he's gone for like a decade fighting in the Trojan War. And she's expressing jealousy of her sister Iphigenia, which if you know, you know, I'm not gonna say anything. And I'm just like, like I just cannot sympathize with a character who is literally expressing envy at things and will not, refuses to understand her mother Clytemnestra's perspective, even though of course Clytemnestra is a very complicated character. And I think Jennifer Saint really addresses the rights and wrongs that she commits. But Elektra, she's pretty unbearable. I don't understand why she is the name that they chose for the title of this book. I honestly wish they had either written her out, as in like not done it from her perspective, or I wish that they just made her a little bit more sympathetic, because I think there was a way it could have been done where she still sort of had this foil characterization where, you know, we maybe still don't agree with her, but we understand her a bit more. But when you literally have her sitting there being like, well, at least this slave woman gets to be near my father. Like, she's so lucky. I'm like, girl, I just can't. I can't deal with you. Yeah, so obviously it's a pretty dark book. I enjoyed it. I will say it's a little bit slow. You should like it whether you already know the overall plot and story or not. But yeah, I do think it is very frustrating from Elektra's perspective. Yeah, I liked it. I don't think it is as strong as other Greek retelling books like the ones by Madeline Miller or even Jennifer Saint's previous book, but I still liked it. And if you enjoy things like this, I do think you will appreciate it for what it is. But yeah, Elektra, could not stand the way she was written. I couldn't do it. Okay, last two are actually audiobooks. I'm not usually an audiobook girl, but sometimes, you know, when you're at work and you're bored, you just want to have an audiobook to listen to. So first one was Carrie, Soto is Back. I knew this was going to be good because Taylor Jenkins Reid books like The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, Daisy Jones and the Six, those audiobooks are so well produced. I knew this one was going to be just as good, and it was. It's a great audiobook. Carrie, Soto is Back is another like historical fiction book about a famous woman. So Carrie Soto is this fictional famous tennis player, and at the beginning of the book she comes out of retirement to try and reclaim her title as being like the person, not just the woman, but the person who has won the most Grand Slam tennis tournaments in the world. She comes out of retirement to reclaim her title because this newer tennis player has surpassed her. You don't have to like sports to enjoy this book, so let me just say that. I really liked it. It's about Carrie's, you know, her tennis career, her character. She has this competitive, arrogant streak, but she has the talent to back that up and the work ethic as well. But she's always really struggled with forming any kind of relationships with people, whether it be friendships or romantic relationships. The only one that she's had consistently is the one with her father, who was her coach. And I just adored the relationship between Carrie and her father. This book is really talks about that, and I don't know, I just really got wrapped up into it. It's set during like the 80s, and I don't know what it was I just think Taylor Jenkins Reid has a way of writing these complex characters that feel so real. They feel like real people. They're not these perfect, shining characters who can do no wrong. Carrie obviously has flaws and faults, but you were just rooting for her anyway, and I loved her growth as a person and the relationships that she forms along the way. Again, her and her dad, like, I have such a sort of similar close relationship with my dad and my parents in general. Hi mom and dad, I love you. Like, my parents are my like best friends. I talk to them all the time, and like me and my dad share our love of reading and things like that. So that father-daughter relationship where they share this love of tennis, I just really, really enjoyed reading about it, and it had such a satisfying ending for me. I think this might be my favorite book of hers. I don't know, I really liked Daisy Jones and I liked Evelyn Hugo, but something about Carrie Soto really drew me in. And then the last book I read was another audiobook, and this was Fable by Adrienne Young. So another Adrienne Young book, but this one's very different. This is a more YA or like new adult fantasy-esque book. Oh, I love the setting. Again, Adrienne Young, she knows how to like spin a setting. So we follow Fable, our main character, and she is in this world that is very much about the sea and oceans, merchants and sailors, pirates. Really has that vibe. And she was raised by one of the like prominent merchants in this world, traveling the seas with him. But a few years before the book begins, her mom dies when their ship goes down, and her dad abandons her on this island. It's like the island of thieves, and she has to very quickly learn to survive. It's cutthroat and deadly. So at the beginning of the book, it's about a few years she's been on there. She's been trying to scrounge up enough money to buy herself passage on a ship to go find her father. And it is just such a good setting. I wouldn't say it's like this super fast-paced, plot-heavy book. It's more just about the world and the setting and their, you know, the characters' journeys throughout it. So yeah, eventually, you know, she gets off the island. And Fable's really interesting because she is a dredger, like her mother. So she dives under the water and dredges for precious stones. And she also has this power that is pretty rare, where she can tell if stones and gems are real or not, and she's able to find them pretty easily under the water because she can sort of like sense them. It's not super plot heavy, but I just enjoyed the ride and the vibes. I definitely plan on reading the sequel. It's sort of just like, you know, it's not like a book I'm gonna remember in a couple years, if I'm being honest, but I still had a really good time reading it. So favorite book of the month. That's a hard one. I feel like I read some very different books. I think it's gonna be The Unmaking of June Farrow. That one just really drew me in, and I enjoyed the setting, the characters, the writing, and the sort of like magical aspects. So that's my favorite. And I would maybe say The Way of Kings, but I haven't finished it yet. So I'll leave you with a shot of my Toby here. Yeah, he's my boy.